Episode 5 of Bridgerton Season 4 marks the point where tension becomes unbearable, and the trailer suggests that no character is allowed to remain untouched by the consequences of their choices. The episode is meticulously designed to explore the collision between desire and reality, where longing is not a whimsical distraction but a dangerous gamble. Every glance, every touch, every word exchanged in this chapter carries weight, because the narrative refuses to let innocence or inexperience excuse mistakes. In the quiet moments, the pressure is palpable. In the overtly emotional moments, it is almost suffocating. This is a Bridgerton that asks its audience not to escape, but to feel the vulnerability of its characters in a way that is both intimate and relentless. From the very beginning of Episode 5, Benedict Bridgerton is positioned at the edge of understanding. The trailer makes it clear that he is starting to realize that love is not merely about the intensity of feeling, but about the responsibility of acknowledging another person's reality. For Benedict, who has floated through life in a world that cushions desire and shields innocence, this realization is jarring. He confronts a version of Sophie that cannot be reshaped into a romantic ideal. She is unyielding, aware, and strategic, and this forces him to confront his privilege in a manner that is painful but necessary. For the first time, his charm and intentions are not sufficient. They are inadequate against the structural and emotional realities Sophie faces. Sophie Beck, in Episode 5, takes center stage as more than a love interest. She becomes the measure against which the fairness of the story is judged. The trailer highlights her meticulous control over her circumstances, even when they are being manipulated by forces beyond her control. Every movement, every guarded conversation, every hesitant glance is deliberate. Sophie is acutely aware of how the world will respond to her vulnerability, and she navigates it with intelligence that contrasts sharply with Benedict's impetuousness. The episode places her in a position of agency where emotional survival becomes a form of resistance, and the tension between what she wants and what she can afford to risk drives the story forward. One of the most riveting aspects of Episode 5 is how it navigates the concept of emotional asymmetry. Benedict and Sophie exist on two different planes of understanding. He approaches the relationship with the assumption that sincerity equals connection. She approaches it with the knowledge that transparency can lead to exposure and harm. This asymmetry is not framed as antagonism, but as reality. The trailer implies that many of the conflicts in this episode stem from this imbalance. Benedict is challenged to recognize the disparity between his world and Sophie's without infantilizing her or dismissing her caution. This is a tension-filled portrayal that demands the audience's attention, empathy, and discomfort simultaneously. The episode also deepens the exploration of stakes, making it impossible for the audience to view love in isolation from consequence. In previous parts of the season, flirtation and longing could exist in a bubble of polite society and narrative leniency. Episode 5 destroys that bubble. The trailer makes it clear that intimacy now carries risk: physical, emotional, and social. The bathtub scene, long anticipated and foreshadowed in prior episodes, is positioned not just as a romantic milestone, but as a test of power dynamics, trust, and vulnerability. The stakes are higher than mere passion. They encompass dignity, survival, and moral consequence. The scene is not indulgent, it is revealing. Additionally, Episode 5 brings the ensemble dynamics to the forefront, emphasizing how external pressures amplify internal conflict. The social structures that have always defined Bridgerton's world are no longer passive backdrops. They are active participants in the tension. Family expectations, societal judgment, and whispered scandals create a suffocating environment where every choice is scrutinized. Benedict's struggle is compounded by his visibility, while Sophie's strategy is defined by the necessity of invisibility in a world that would exploit her if she is seen. Episode 5 portrays these pressures not as narrative devices, but as lived reality, making the conflict feel organic, high stakes, and terrifyingly real. What distinguishes Episode 5 is also its refusal to offer easy emotional resolutions. Unlike previous episodes, where misunderstandings could be smoothed over by confession or romantic gesture, this chapter imposes delays and consequences. Benedict's realizations are partial, tentative, and often painfully misaligned with Sophie's understanding of the situation. Sophie's defenses are not broken by charm or persistence, but only tested by risk and negotiation. The episode thrives in the space between attempted connection and inevitable miui.
Episode 6 of Bridgerton Season 4 picks up directly from the intensity of Episode 5, and the trailer makes it clear that the emotional stakes are only growing sharper. If Episode 5 was about realizing the limits of desire, Episode 6 is about facing the consequences of those limits. Everything that has been simmering, the imbalance of power, the clash between fantasy and reality, and the tension between intention and impact comes to the surface in ways that are intimate, devastating, and impossible to ignore. The narrative no longer allows its characters to exist in emotional comfort. Instead, it presses them to confront the messy, uncomfortable realities of love, privilege, and survival. From the very first scenes, Benedict Bridgerton is presented as a man increasingly aware of how little he actually understands Sophie's world. The trailer suggests that he begins to grasp the stakes he has so far ignored, the ways in which his freedom, his charm, and his status shield him from consequences that Sophie must navigate daily. He approaches her with more caution, but the caution comes too late to prevent the tension that has already accumulated. His growing realization is painful, not just for him, but for the audience, who have been watching him operate in a fantasy until now. The moment he begins to see Sophie not as an object of desire, but as a person with her own boundaries, is both a turning point and a source of anxiety, because it is unclear whether understanding can come before harm is done. Sophie, on the other hand, demonstrates a depth of strategy and emotional intelligence that continues to astonish. Episode 6 appears to frame her as a master of calculated vulnerability. She is aware that every gesture, every response, every word carries weight and consequence. The trailer emphasizes that her silence, her pauses, and even her small concessions are not indications of weakness, but deliberate acts designed to maintain control in a world that has rarely allowed her any. She is not only protecting herself from social danger, but from emotional overexposure. And Episode 6 suggests that she is willing to endure frustration and misunderstanding from Benedict as a necessary cost of self-preservation. The interplay between the two characters is increasingly fraught. Benedict's persistent desire to connect clashes against Sophie's disciplined caution, creating a tension that feels both romantic and terrifying. The trailer hints at moments where he misreads her intentions, not maliciously, but inevitably, because he is operating from a place of comfort she cannot afford. These missteps are critical because Episode 6 positions every misunderstanding as consequential. The stakes are no longer hypothetical, they are tangible. The audience is left to wonder whether their love can survive these repeated misalignments, or if each misstep will push them further apart. Episode 6 also emphasizes the broader social pressures that shape every action and choice. In previous seasons, society often functioned as a backdrop or a source of lighthearted obstacles. Here, it is an active force, magnifying danger, shaping opportunity, and amplifying miscommunication. Every glance in public, every whispered rumor, every subtle expectation has weight. Benedict's social status allows him freedom, while Sophie's constrained position forces caution. The trailer shows that these inequalities are no longer abstract, they are central to the narrative conflict, underscoring the show's exploration of how privilege and survival coexist uneasily in the world of Bridgerton. One of the most compelling elements in Episode 6 is how it explores the psychology of anticipation and delayed consequence. The trailer implies that both Benedict and Sophie are constantly aware of potential outcomes, but in very different ways. Benedict feels the pressure emotionally through longing and frustration, while Sophie calculates it practically through strategy and foresight. This dual awareness creates a tension that is invisible to the casual observer, but profoundly felt by the audience. Each interaction carries layers of unspoken meaning and potential peril. Every choice is a gamble, and every glance may conceal as much as it reveals. The episode seems to be particularly focused on the negotiation of intimacy. The trailer hints that the bathtub scene, which has been anticipated for weeks, is no longer just a romantic interlude. It becomes a test of trust, respect, and communication. Every subtle action and reaction in this scene is loaded with stakes that extend far beyond the immediate moment. Episode 6 suggests that the consequences of emotional and physical closeness ripple outward, influencing not just the characters' feelings, but their standing in the social and personal spheres they inhabit. Intimacy is not safe, desire is not harmless, and understanding is not guaranteed. Sophie's independence and self-reliance are further highlighted in Episode 6. Episode 7 of Bridgerton Season 4 appears to push the narrative into territory where consequences can no longer be postponed. The trailer conveys an undeniable tension. The story is no longer about gentle courtship or polite longing, it is about choices with irrevocable outcomes. Every glance, every touch, every word spoken or withheld carries weight far beyond the immediate moment. The episode seems determined to confront the audience with the uncomfortable truth that love, even when sincere, can exist in conflict with reality, power, and survival. Episode 7 does not shy away from complexity, it embraces it, forcing both characters and viewers to wrestle with the implications of desire in a world that does not forgive mistakes. From the first scenes, Benedict Bridgerton is portrayed at a crossroads. The trailer suggests that his internal struggle, his realization of the limitations of his previous worldview, has intensified. Benedict is beginning to recognize that love cannot simply be pursued with charm and intention alone. To truly connect with Sophie, he must confront the social, emotional, and structural realities that have always shaped her existence. But awareness does not equate to mastery. Episode 7 shows him grappling with the painful mismatch between intention and impact, making him vulnerable in ways that are unfamiliar and, at times, humiliating. The audience witnesses a man forced to unlearn the easy assumptions of his privileged upbringing, and that process is as fascinating as it is heartbreaking. Sophie Beck's trajectory in Episode 7 continues to emphasize strategic emotional management. She is fully aware of the dangers inherent in vulnerability, and the trailer suggests that her careful navigation of these hazards defines the episode. Her interactions with Benedict are measured, deliberate, and cautious, demonstrating a constant awareness of the broader consequences that extend far beyond the romantic sphere. Every smile, every hesitated glance, and every gesture of warmth is calculated to maintain agency and self-preservation. Sophie is not merely reactive, she is preemptive, anticipating potential threats and mitigating them in ways that underscore her intelligence and resilience. Episode 7 positions her as a character whose survival skills are just as compelling as her emotional depth. The tension between them is intensified by the asymmetry in perception and experience. Benedict continues to operate from a place of emotional immediacy, responding to desire as if it were the primary measure of connection. Sophie operates from foresight and caution, understanding the long-term implications of every emotional engagement. Episode 7 appears to exploit this asymmetry to the fullest, highlighting the dangers of misaligned intentions. Each misstep is amplified, not through overt drama, but through the subtleties of body language, timing, and the implications of context. The audience is forced to sit with the discomfort, recognizing that sincerity alone cannot guarantee safety, understanding, or survival. Social pressure remains a dominant force in Episode 7. The trailer suggests that the wider world is watching, and societal judgment operates as an invisible antagonist, constraining both characters. For Benedict, privilege allows a degree of freedom, but it also magnifies the consequences of misjudgment. For Sophie, visibility carries vulnerability, and even minor missteps could threaten both reputation and personal security. Episode 7 underscores how external forces intersect with personal decisions, creating a landscape in which every action is fraught with potential danger. The episode portrays these pressures not as plot devices, but as integral forces that shape the emotional and narrative stakes. One of the central themes highlighted in Episode 7 is the negotiation of intimacy in a world where safety and desire are often at odds. The trailer hints at moments of both closeness and tension, where emotional and physical vulnerability coexist with caution. The long-anticipated bathtub scene, for example, is framed less as a romantic indulgence and more as a negotiation of trust, agency, and consequence. Every movement and reaction carries significance, revealing how deeply intertwined desire and risk have become. Episode 7 seems to emphasize that love in this context is not simply a source of comfort. It is a test of understanding, empathy, and restraint. The episode also explores the psychological complexity of anticipation and delayed consequence. Benedict feels urgency and frustration as he tries to bridge the gap between himself and Sophie, while Sophie anticipates potential danger, calculating every engagement to preserve autonomy and survival. This dual consciousness creates tension that is both compelling and anxiety-inducing as each character's choices reverberate in ways that are unpredictable, yet inevitable. Episode 7 is as much about what is left unsaid as what is articulated. Episode 8 of Bridgerton Season 4 represents a turning point where tension, stakes, and emotion converge in ways that are both subtle and devastating. The trailer immediately signals that nothing will remain unexamined in this episode. Every character's intentions, every societal expectation, and every personal desire is brought into sharp relief. This is not an episode of easy reconciliations or sweeping romantic gestures. It is an episode that interrogates the cost of love, the weight of consequence, and the fragility of trust. From the outset, the audience is made to feel that even the smallest misstep can ripple outward with irreversible effects. Episode 8 challenges the very foundations of the relationships we have been following, positioning the narrative to test endurance, perception, and understanding. Benedict Bridgerton, in this episode, is increasingly aware of the complexity of Sophie's world, yet the trailer suggests he is still not fully equipped to navigate it. His charm and sincerity, which once allowed him to move through society unimpeded, now clash with a reality that demands comprehension over impulse. Benedict is faced with the painful realization that wanting someone deeply does not grant the right to dictate their experience or their emotional space. Episode 8 portrays him grappling with the dissonance between intention and impact, creating moments of vulnerability that are as compelling as they are uncomfortable. The audience is invited to witness his emotional evolution in real time, recognizing that understanding is neither immediate nor guaranteed. Sophie, meanwhile, continues to assert control over her circumstances in ways that are both strategic and deeply human. The trailer suggests that her agency is on full display in Episode 8, as she negotiates every interaction, weighs every risk, and considers the consequences of emotional exposure with precision. Her caution is not framed as weakness, but as survival. A survival that has been honed through years of navigating a society that privileges appearance over reality. The episode emphasizes that Sophie's intelligence, foresight, and resilience are as vital to the story as her feelings, and that her choices have real stakes that cannot be ignored or overridden by romantic desire. The tension between them reaches new heights in this episode, as Benedict's desire to connect and Sophie's need to protect collide repeatedly. The trailer implies that Episode 8 will explore how misalignment between intention and perception can magnify emotional risk. Every interaction is fraught with potential misunderstanding, and the episode thrives in the space between connection and conflict. What makes this particularly compelling is that neither character is framed as villainous or mistaken in a moral sense. Rather, the drama emerges from the unavoidable complexity of navigating love in an unequal world. The audience is forced to sit with the discomfort of this imbalance, recognizing that even sincere affection can generate harm when understanding lags behind desire. Social pressures continue to loom large in Episode 8, shaping actions and constraining choices. The trailer indicates that both internal and external forces collide to heighten stakes. Family expectations, societal judgment, and whispered gossip amplify every decision. Benedict's social freedom contrasts sharply with Sophie's vulnerability, creating a landscape in which every step must be measured. Episode 8 presents these pressures not as mere background, but as active participants in the tension, ensuring that the narrative stakes are grounded in a believable and compelling reality. The episode also intensifies the exploration of intimacy and trust. The trailer hints at interactions that are emotionally charged, where physical closeness and vulnerability are inseparable from risk. The long-anticipated bathtub scene, while previously foreshadowed, is treated here not as indulgence, but as a negotiation of agency and understanding. Episode 8 frames this intimacy as a test of patience, of comprehension, of the ability to reconcile desire with consequence. Every subtle gesture, every hesitant glance, and every pause communicates volumes about what is at risk. In this episode, closeness is not safe. It is fraught, and that uncertainty heightens emotional engagement. The psychological tension in episode 8 is amplified by the asymmetry of experience. Benedict approaches every situation from a place of emotional immediacy, driven by longing and sincerity, whereas Sophie approaches them from foresight and caution, informed by lived reality and a keen awareness of consequence. This dual consciousness generates a narrative energy that is simultaneously romantic, suspenseful, and profoundly unsettling. Episode 8 does not simplify this dynamic. It dwells in it, allowing the audience to experience the strain and ambiguity of these mismatched perspectives. Agency is central to the episode.